Okay, very good. So this is the UTC Distinguished Global Scholar Podcast, and my name is Takeo Suzuki. I'm the Executive Director for Center for Global Education, and I also have Dr. Joanne Romani. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Joanne Romani. I'm the Vice Chancellor of Research and Dean of the Graduate School, and I'm really excited to be here, especially for this inaugural program.
Thank you, and excellent. And then thank you, Dr. Khmelko, for being our guest today. Our hope is to spotlight how UTC faculty members are connected with the world and solving emerging challenges for the future global society. And Dr. Romani and I are very, very happy to host you, Dr. Khmelko, today. So my first question is, can you briefly introduce yourself, how you get to UTC and what you teach, that line of subject, please?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I'm very excited to be here. What a wonderful community here to talk about my work. I'm professor of political science and public service. I've been at UTC since 2010. I love it here. What an amazing school we have in here. I mean, truly wonderful institution dedicated to teaching, to research. So that's truly a wonderful place to be for any scholar. And I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So my first question is, can you explain your scholarly work or scholarly interest and what sort of inspiration you had behind the project or your research interest?
Oh, I always wanted to make this planet a better place for everybody. I want each and every person on the planet to be able to have the best life possible. And my particular focus, of course, is on democracies. We all know that people have better life in a democracy. I'm very much interested in how can we, as individuals, very different individuals, live together and govern in the same society, or people with multiple cultures, groups have different cultures. How can we all coexist in one society and have a good life? My specific focus of my research is on legislatures, congresses, basically representative assemblies, and that's what I'm studying in subdesk, and that's where my work is at the moment.
Very interesting.
So could I just kind of like to follow up, can you kind of give me an idea, what was your inspiration initially for this? That was part of the question like that Takeo had asked you, because it's a really interesting topic, but as a young person, I can't see being inspired to do something like this. So I'm kind of curious how you as a young scholar decided on this particular topic. And also, can you comment on looking at representative assemblies and Congress and things like that? How have you seen it change over the scope of your research?
Mm-hmm. Well, to the first part of the question, I guess my life experience brought me into the study of this question. I grew up in the Soviet Union, in Ukraine, and it was an authoritarian society, one-party society. And then I came here to study, and I found another society where it's not the party loyalty, but rather what you do, how hardworking you are, how honest you are, that gets you through your career. I graduated and I got 5 job offers right away from schools in the country. And it was amazing. And it's not because of my party loyalty to any specific ideology or any specific person or any specific leader, dictator, whatever it was, but rather because of my knowledge, of my skills. So it's all competitive. And when I saw the difference between the two societies, between the liberal society and totalitarian society, it's quite understandable to me why so many people want to come here and be with us. Because we as American, of course, I'm an American already for over 20 years, and we as American are so incredibly lucky to have what we have, this amazing country, this amazing opportunities to us. And I just wanted to, for everybody, I'm just a person who likes everybody to be happy. I'm happy when people around me are. I want the entire planet to be happy. And besides, if everybody is happy, then nobody fights, and it's a better life for everybody. So I just wanted better life for everybody, but it's really because I had quite extreme life experience, the very totalitarian regime of the Soviet Union, and then coming to quite liberal society of the United States. So that's kind of was what was behind my motivation to study it and to find solutions and to work with policymakers to actually make a difference, not only produce research research of discovery, if you wish, but also engage in research of application. That was a huge motivating force for me to make it better for everybody. As to changes, that's a very good question, because that's exactly where I am with my research right now. Look, when I started it, and it was quite some time ago by now, for like 20 years ago when I started, at that time, when you come to the United States or any developed democracy, right, what you would see, a range of ideologies between groups on a scale of 1 to 10, probably 4, 5, 6. And then what we see right now is a huge political polarization. So that's where the developing countries were. That's where the countries of the former Soviet Union were. On a scale of 1 to 10, there were 100 to minus to 100 plus. And I was trying to find, and now I see it's happening in UK. Look at UK, at the polarization there. Look at France, look at many developed democracies. And so that's exactly where the difference is. Now, legislators must have compromise. You cannot have a functional democracy without compromise. But when you have this extreme degree of political polarization, legislatures cannot come to an agreement, which means there is a stalemate, which means nothing gets done, and which means that people are suffering. And so that's where I am with my research. I'm looking at what legislatures around the world have in terms of their capacity, or what they can introduce in terms of new organizational structures, new rules, new procedures, in order to move it from this point of my way or highway, which is not democracy, that's already dictatorship, to move it back to where it needs to be, which is where democracy is. Give a little, gain a little. It's really all about compromise. But how do you get to that? Everybody knows what we want. The question is how to get there. This is exactly what I'm working on. How do you get to the compromise in a legislature which has extreme political polarization? From, if you look at Eastern Europe, you would see those who want to go back to socialism versus those who want laissez-faire capitalism. How do you get people to that point where they can work together and share a society? Really, we share the road. How about we share a society?
Oh, and I also like to ask you the follow-up question. So you've been studying this different form of governments and the people of the country, the different countries. So at this moment in the United States, as of today, 1 to 10, how do you evaluate Japanese American people? Are they 10 is the happiest one, 1 is the unhappiest one? How do you evaluate American people at this moment?
It depends on which group, I guess. I'm an academic, so my answer always starts with it depends. Japan, and maybe Joanne can give a better answer to that. The way my research is so much oriented outside of the United States, but here in the US, I see it depends on the group you're in. Some groups are extremely unhappy, some are happy, but what I see, this polarization in terms of happiness, ideological polarization led to polarization in terms of happiness, and that unfortunately will lead to more political polarization. I can tell you as a scholar, that's an unfortunate progression of things unless some changes are introduced. In the US, that probably needs to be introduced by courts at this time, but Joanne may have a better answer to that.
Well, and then how about this? Which country has the most happiest people in the world on the whole planet? What do you think?
Oh yeah, I actually know it for just the other day in my class. I teach comparative government classes, and I actually ask students to look at the happiest countries in the world. And actually, consistently in the top in the world, you would find Scandinavian countries such as Finland, for example. However, right now you can look at Australia, New Zealand, you can look at those countries. Denmark is another happy country. And actually our Canadian neighbor, well, just north of us, is much happier than we are. So if my students usually are very surprised when they check, and I say, you can find any index you want, just go Google happiness index and find it. And they're very surprised to see that, unfortunately, right now, the United States is not the happiest among industrialized countries.
Okay, thank you. So let me move on to my next question. You have done so many research, you have written so many papers, you present so many ideas at the conferences. So among all, what is your most favorite memory that related to this project, your scholarly work?
My absolutely favorite moment is to see my ideas being implemented and actually working. In my career, I've been very fortunate to being able to get interest of policymakers, of the World Bank, of the United States Agency for International Development, of multiple European organizations who would invite me and fly me all over the world to just share my ideas. But what's amazing that then I see these ideas being implemented, and I'm not saying I'm the only one. I am part of a network of scholars and practitioners who work together, but it's wonderful to being able to generate ideas and then work with people and see some of it in practice and how it is working, and see basically make a difference in the world. It's a wonderful feeling to produce an idea and finally have that aha moment. Oh, I know the answer to that question. That's truly amazing. After you suffer and struggle and search and finally you find it. It's an amazing feeling. But my absolutely wonderful memory is this consistent network of academics, practitioners working together, and then seeing ideas being implemented and seeing ideas actually moving this world to a better place and actually making a difference, however little maybe, but it's still moving to, it's getting there. So we are getting there. That's the best thing.
So that's your best memory. Can you tell me what one of your biggest challenges has been in doing some of your research?
Well, I should say one of the biggest, and I'm not going to name names, but there are times when there was a time when I was literally sitting and crying, and I'm very grateful to some of the top governmental officials who came to my rescue, basically, because I got criticized publicly and quite viciously, and I didn't know why. And then one of the students of that person told me, I said, that's probably because I speak with an accent, probably because I was born in the other part of the world. And she told me, no, Irina, that's not it. It's not because you speak with an accent, it's because you're a woman. And he believes that only men belong in you're in the field of foreign policy right now. And as a woman, that's not the place for the woman. And that was probably, that's one of dealing with that and still working. And I still have to work. Look, that was one of the brightest and the smartest and the most amazing brains on this planet. And then realizing that I am treated differently just because I'm a woman, even though my ideas, fortunately, the other man actually in the organization, when they saw the email that came from the very top of one of their was quite like, leave her alone, she knows what she's doing. And that was not like in academia with sugarcoat and all that. It was like, leave her alone, hands off her. But it was probably one of the biggest challenges to know that somehow it's not my brain ability for some people, but it's really my gender, which I don't understand. What does it have to do with anything? What does my gender has to, I never seen it. I've seen smart women, stupid women. Forgive me, I've seen smart men and I've seen stupid men. I mean, I've seen it all. And in my life, I'm old, so I kind of can say that. But I can see that I don't see that gender should be a determined, gender or any other, your race or ethnicity or anything like that, that any of that should be, it has anything to do. I've worked all over the world and I've seen men and women and different races and different ethnicities, and it's really who you are. It should not be your gender identification, but that's probably one of the, and since I am in the field of foreign policy, and I can see how hard it is for some people to work with women, but I also see how we women can make a difference, because I just kept my mouth shut and I just worked through that, and I did earn the respect. I decided I'm going to fight. I'm not going to do, I'm going to, and I worked through that situation. And I understand at some age it's hard to change, but at the same time, I'm glad that I can make this difference. I was happy I could make this difference and maybe change a little bit the opinion of this person, that we women, it has nothing to do with being a woman. It really has everything to do with who you are.
And just to say, given the breadth of women global leaders over the last 20, 30 years, I mean, I'm surprised that anybody would have something like that. But thank you. That was really
well. In some countries where I work and I have to do my field research, there is a saying in some countries, and unfortunately it's prevalent, women have long hair, short brains, and it's a kind of a joke, and I don't see it as a joke. I see it as I just see it as a ignorance, and just but I believe that we women, when we do what we do, with some patience, it takes a lot of patience and understanding and kindness. We need to have kindness, and when we do that, we really make a difference. We make a difference in the minds, and we change the community of scholars where there are some prejudice. Unfortunately, it exists against women, but we can make a difference. And I am absolutely happy that I can make this difference. But it is a challenge, because when you're doing the work, and then in addition to challenges of the work, you have to face a challenge because somebody doesn't think as much of you because you're a woman. That is heartbreaking to see, especially if it's a person you respect, especially if it's a person that you have admiration for. It's really heartbreaking. I was really literally sitting, and I don't cry too often, but I was literally sitting and crying. It was just so incredibly heartbreaking.
Well, thank you. My next question is how is your research or work impacting our community? If you can give us some examples, make impact either locally or globally or wherever you have done your research or work, we'd like to know some of the work examples.
One of the most interesting projects that I've done was actually on Eastern Europe, of course, on the country where I was born, in Ukraine and Russia. In Ukraine, there is a huge issue with corruption. And I've done some research, and one of the interesting memories was to go there and do research, first of all, on that corruption, but then actually coming back and working with the scholars in World Bank and USAID. Those were very interesting interactions with people that probably, and that's how you make them. If you want to make a difference in this world, research is very important, research of discovery, but you need to engage the community of practitioners. You need to engage people who actually, they're in the field, or policymakers in different organizations. And that's probably some of the most interesting parts of my work that I recall, and engaging with these people and seeing how administrators are thinking, actually, because there's a huge difference between being academic and administrator. If your one thing is to generate idea, the other thing is, how do you implement it? Because administrators, like, I was shocked to learn, okay, they're on a 3-month cycle. In 3 months, they have to produce a report to implement my idea. I look at it, okay, it will take a few years, but they need a result. So I need to rethink my ideas and find something that could actually work on a 3-month increment. So they could actually report, because, well, obviously funding comes from legislature. And so that was probably the most challenging, but also most interesting part, to see how, okay, this is a good idea. Now, what do you do with that idea, given what administrators are facing and their limitations and what they actually need to be successful? And they want to be successful in their work, but they have their requirements from their bosses. So ideas need to match the practical life of people who are doing the job. So that was most interesting.
Okay, my dog's barking. Just as a follow-up though, and you were talking about the community of scholars and the practitioners and things, can you kind of also loop in, how do you utilize students in some of this work? I mean, do you have students that work with you in Ukraine or here locally? Do you have students with projects locally that are helping to get the same implementation and the excitement and actually participating in a lot of the policies? How do you integrate your students?
Well, with students, in general, I see myself as a teacher scholar, so I do engage. My most interesting project, probably related to this field of research, is or was with the honors college thesis, when we were working on the thesis with one of our recent graduates, who is right now to wonderful graduate program. So that was really Akbar Akmani. He was an amazing student of mine, and we worked on that. However, I always try to tailor the research and engagement with students, giving their interest, and therefore I have the second line of research on nonprofit organizations. With one student, I worked on community gardens paper. Another paper we published was on food insecurity. It's already published with 2 of our students at UTC, that we worked together on this research, and with another student, we went to a conference to present on but it's on local nonprofits, which is another thing which fascinates me. I know it's local, I know it's community, but this is my second line of research, and I publish there, and I do engage students, and this is where the student interest is. So I work with them, I meet them where they are and work with them on what we need to, and food insecurity in Chattanooga is in general is a big issue. There are many people who truly require help, and what I see in Chattanooga that we do have the food bank, which is an organization which is doing an amazing job, and we were researching the change from calorie-based food provision to nutritional value, because it's not enough to give a person enough calories. You need to and then you need to educate how to cook that spinach, how to cook the vegetables, how to deal with all that. So we did a lot of research on that, and right now, of course, this is community gardens, which is a true way to increase the quality of life in a community. So that's my second line of research, where the majority of my students are with my second line of research, because that's where their interest is.
Thank you. My next question is, what is the most common myth about the research topic? I'm sure it's not easy to explain what you study to the people in the community, or for your scholarly work, probably the politicians or beyond. So what's the common myth about the research topic, and can you debunk some of the myths you may experience?
Well, one of the biggest misconceptions about my research topic is that we just need to leave the rest of the world alone, and they can discover democracy on their own if they want to, and they can do it on their own. And the problem is that the science is consistent. People cannot, we have 1 billion people living in poverty, absolute poverty on this planet. They will never get out of poverty without outside intervention, no matter how hard they work. The same with the democracy. In other words, we have a know-how. We already have the bicycle. Making them to discover the bicycle may take too long. It also has huge financial security consequences, because we pay at the end. I mean, instability in the world breeds disease, breeds crime, breeds, look, democracies do not fight. Democracies actually trade with each other. With Western Europe, we have huge trade. We travel, we are safe. But countries that are poor and unstable, look at Somalia. I mean, with the failed government, that's an extreme example. But when the government fails, here's where you see pirates. And that's at the end of the day, look, the disease, Ebola, which came from Africa, and multiple other things, human trafficking, drug trafficking, it all, the breeding ground is this poverty and unstable societies. So to me, it's like my research is more like going to a gym. You can invest in a gym membership and be happy and healthy. Doesn't mean you will never get sick. You probably will, but your chances of being healthy are much better if you go to the gym than if you don't. Well, alternatively, you can eat whatever, not exercise. And at the end, well, yeah, there is always surgery, but that's already extreme and expensive. So there are cheaper ways to live happy life and painless life too. So to me, my research is important for everybody here, people in the United States or all over the world. And we all can be happy on this planet. However, yeah, I do understand that some people say, why do we even need to look outside? Why? And we also learn a lot. What's interesting, there are so many lessons that already learned in governments of the other countries. If we only knew, we Americans don't need to rediscover the bicycle either, because there are solutions you can find in other places on this planet. So to me, my research really allows to compare different solutions and give people options. And I believe life should be about options. You should be able to choose, but to choose, you need to know what options are, what to choose from. So to me, I would like to give people here in the US options to choose from, there, abroad, overseas options. So all my work is about options, and I believe options is a good thing. It allows us to find solutions.
So as a follow-up, I mean, you were kind of referring to the previous, like America first, why should we engage with it? We have our own issues here within the United States. But one of the questions is too, and sometimes we struggle with this as a country, how do you give options, or how do you engage with potential solutions or options without appearing like you're telling somebody what to do? You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying, and telling, and also appearing not being too sensitive if somebody's struggling financially and you're telling them, look, I'm an academic, I'm an educator, so my personal way is through education, and the way I do it in my classes, I don't tell students. That's a huge misconception about my profession. Best of the best teachers, telling is not teaching. Teaching is allowing students to discover answers on their own. Just give them tools, give them resources, point them, and then let them do their own research. Let them engage with this world. So when they engage with this particular world, then it makes a difference. Well, here in the community, what I do, I serve as a vice president for the Sister City Association. And what we do, we have all these events and we invite the entire community and allow people to come and discover for themselves, to see for themselves, to meet other people. But I understand it takes certain level of human curiosity and a certain way. It may be challenging too when you're meeting somebody who is different from you. Is it scary? Is it how do you take it? It takes some bravery to explore the world. But what I discovered, people love it. Takeo, you've been at our Russian night at UTC. We started at 10 o'clock, and then at night, nobody's leaving. The room is still packed. It's over like close to 100 people in a room, and everybody, community, students, nobody wants to leave. Nobody's getting any points. So people are curious. People are interested in finding the answers. It's all about how do you let them, and when we let them talk to Russians to our Russian sister city via video conference, Russians came at 2 o'clock in the morning because of a time difference to talk to us. So people do want to talk, people do want to find out, but they want to have it from the horse's mouth. They don't want to hear somebody telling them. They want to be able to ask questions. But it is, I was interpreting that meeting, and I know that one of the people went behind my back to somebody else and said, did she really translate my questions? That was a question about Putin, and Russians were just rolling their eyes and not answering. They're stupid to answer some questions that can get them in question. But I asked it multiple times, different ways, but person did not even trust. But then at the end, after being pretty rough, he came to me and said, Professor, you actually hold your own. I respect you. Thank you. And so again, it takes patience, it takes understanding and meeting people where they are. As educators, we must meet people where they are, and we must give them opportunities to discover. But again, you can lead the horse to the water. Will they drink? Hopefully with enough incentives, with enough thirst. I've seen them wanting information, wanting to discover. But to me, my personal way of doing that, instead of telling and patronizing, even though I may know the answer, I have to be patient and wait for them. I do it with my son, he has to discover. I do it with everybody. Everybody I discover still. My parents are still waiting on me to discover something. So I guess that's how we do it. We just be patient with people and let them discover on their own, find answers on their own. That's my personal way.
Well, let me ask you the follow-up of that question, because the teaching, I get their message, teaching is very important. And make them find their own way, that's very important. But in this 21st century, there's so much, or almost too much information. Some of the information also misleading. So in terms of teaching, how do you teach them how to find the most appropriate information for them to make decisions about anything? Do you have any recommendation or suggestions?
Well, and if it is in if it is in the academic setting, then it's pretty straightforward. You use peer-reviewed sources, and you require, it needs to be in your syllabus that you require them to use peer-reviewed sources, which means double-blinded review, which means sources that are proven, or from the organizations that have approval. Like, for example, I'm teaching class on non-government organizations. and they do research, but then they look, let's say if you look at the Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Red Cross, those are reputable organizations, you know, that they are basically accountability, they keep accountable each other, so there is a network in there. So it needs to be reputable sources, so they can find any sources they want, but that means double-blinded, peer-reviewed sources, not propaganda. You give them research methods, so you basically teach them, and that's not my class, I don't teach this class right now, but they do take research methods, so basically they know how not only find information, but how to process information, what tools to use in order to find those answers. So you give them, I see it as a toolkit, basically give a student a toolkit, teach the student how to use it. If you're an electrician, you get your screwdriver and everything else, and they will show you how to use it and how to be safe. And but then you're on your own to fix things. The same with the classes. I see it as giving a toolkit, teaching students how to use the toolkit and apply it in the real world, and then wherever their discovery takes them, it takes them, and it literally takes them different places. Discovery process can be challenging, so I have to be there for them every step of the way, supportive and understanding, and still providing encouragement, providing additional tools when needed, when I see that they get stuck at something. But that's, I don't know any other way except provide, but that's an academic setting, and I understand your question may apply to a larger setting. And for that, I truly believe in organizations like Sister Cities. That's why I volunteer so much of my time there, because I believe it makes difference. It allows people to come, explore, and just see on their own. But those are a couple of ways that I figured for myself. I'm sure there are more.
I'm pausing purposely so that my editor can switch the gears now. There should be the slide going in between, so she can cut me out. Amy, if you're listening, you can cut me out this segment. And then I'm gonna give another 5-second quietness now.
Okay.
Okay, so next question, I'd like to ask you as a Scala practitioner, and there may be some students out there who may be interested in going to your field. So my first question is, what has been your biggest accomplishment in your career thus so far as a scholar?
Well, traditionally in my field, publication of a book, even one book, is considered to be a huge accomplishment. At this point, I have 2, and I'm working on the 3rd one. However, to me personally, what I consider in my field of research, that's an ultimate acknowledgement of the quality of your work. It's interest from the practitioners, from policymakers, when they ask what you think, and when administrators at the top levels are willing to pay to fly you somewhere and then spend time to listen to what you have to say and then actually use their ideas. And again, I'm not saying that I'm the only one. I'm part of a network of highly educated and skilled scholars who work with practitioners. But I am part of this network, and in my field of work, this is an ultimate recognition of who you are. If somebody in those positions can show any interest in your work, and my work had consistent interest over the years from World Bank, USAID, and multiple other developmental organizations around the world.
I like that. But I kind of want to switch gears there. You're talking about your this is your biggest scholarly accomplishment. Can you give us something that, which is incredibly important in your field, but is there something else that you see as an accomplishment that might not be seen as quite so academic, but really you feel that you've made a difference, or something, again, related to some of either your first or second line of research with or without students? I'm just kind of curious, because there's always those ones that are emotional. It's may not be the recognition that you would get from these books and papers and things like that, but is there something else?
Yeah, there is a big portion of my work. I like to build partnerships, and I like to enable other people to succeed. And in my line of work, it may not necessarily be the most rewarded things. But my personal thing is that to work with students who, again, there is no, but if I see the student who is interested in research, for example, I would give hours and I would make sure that we can travel to a conference together and spend time and work. And I believe it's part of who we are as professors, that we just give time to things that not necessarily may be rewarded immediately, or working on these on the second line of research. One line is more than enough at UTC, but the second one, and especially so different from the first one, but I see the community need, and I see that I can say something that can make a difference. And I did make it, because food insecurity is the biggest one of the that's probably what my personal, that's where I got a lot of joy, when I made some discoveries and I could say something that, again, the food bank came to me and talked to me because they found something that what I said was of interest to them. So I'm glad that I can make a difference, whether locally or internationally. I just like to make a difference. But yeah, that's not necessarily which gets you any particular brownie points, but it's something that you get a lot of satisfaction when you see a student moving to that next level, when you see a community here or internationally finding that little thing that can move them into a better place, just making life better. I mean, that I want it to be my legacy, just on this planet, making this planet a better place. So if it is in a community or international, I will do it anywhere. But yeah, in my field, what really counts is, of course, publishing. And if I didn't do the other, I probably would have had another book, 2 or 3. But that's a personal choice. And that's why I'm with an institution like UTC, that it's not Research One, where that would be a must. So I've chosen wisely for who I am. My work really matches my personality. So my preferences, my values, so that's where I am. And yes, even here, if I published more books, yeah, that certainly would get me a few more awards, I'm sure. But what I'm doing is rewarding by itself. So there are rewards which institutions can give you, but there are rewards that your personal rewards and those intrinsic that you can internally get for yourself. And it's nice to have a combination of both. But yeah, but that's my thing, just working and making difference.
Well, thank you. You gave us some keywords. So you mentioned legacy. So in terms of legacy, the accomplishments you have made so far, not only your accomplishment, community accomplishment, but I feel like you've been planting a really good seed for the future and the future student, future community. So if there is a student who like to go into your field, I have 3 questions here, back to back. So if we have a student who like to go to your field, what advice would you give it to student? And then also, I'm sure you had a few regrets, maybe not too many regrets as a scholar so far, but are there anything that you wish you had known before you started out? And also, you sound like a very successful scholar and scholar practitioner now. What do you think what kind of unique skill do you think you have to become this successful?
The short answer to all 3 questions is you have to be honestly willing and able and wanting to wish well others. In this kind of a profession, and when you're dealing, especially if you go into my line of work, we are a small group of highly skilled professionals who can make a difference and who work at this level. Everybody is a star. Everybody is absolutely bright, highly educated, usually handpicked, usually top of the like absolutely top people on this planet invested in each and every one of us a lot of time and energy. So unless you're willing to wish well others, you'll be miserable in this profession. You have to be able to be happy seeing successes of your colleagues, seeing successes of younger generations, and just being able to work with other people. I also don't believe that any one person can find an answer to any of the huge questions that this planet is facing. In my view, we need to work together And that means building partnerships, and that means people should be willing to work with you. But then think about it, you work in my field of work, you work with different cultures. Even look at just recently I've been looking at Germans and Americans and Russians. These are different cultures, and you have to be culture sensitive. You have to be able to wish people well sincerely, and then be honest, be kind, and be hardworking. I believe my personal secret of success is just have a bottom line and decency, human decency, kindness, and hardworking. And if you do all that, people, somehow life will go the way you want, and the way, if you want this kind of next level, that's what will get you there. But it really takes kindness and ability to wish well to people around you.
So, and I'm just going to kind of circle back to what Takeo had mentioned to you. I'd love to hear your advice for people who are, out there. I know there's lots of advice I give my students, about what my mistakes and what I wish I had done and how to do it better than I did, because I was first generation, and first generation college student, definitely first generation advanced degrees. So I'm kind of curious, what would you tell, somebody who's a freshman coming in and might be interested in this? So could you give us some of your advice?
If a freshman wants to go on this line of in this career and kind of get to graduate studies, get through all that, a big piece of an advice is that first of all, be patient, and also understand that it's not personal. Discussion of the ideas is not a discussion of who you are, and unless you are willing. The best piece of advice I would say is think about it. If you're willing to find 100 wrong ways of doing something and being totally frustrated and banging your head on the wall, and the moment when you discover something, it's that aha moment, and that moment makes you happy enough to be able to understand that, yes, to get to the answer, you'll have to find 100 different ways of doing something wrong. And that means frustration, and that means it's hard, and it may be exhausting, but also it's not personal. When you're going through peer reviews, and in my career, you're constantly reviewed. Peer review is part of who we are. Our work is constantly reviewed, but that's a good thing. It's actually a wonderful thing, but yeah, you would get comments which you may not like, but peer review is who we are, and you have to be ready. All your life is public, all your work is public. Everything you do is discussed to smallest possible details. And if you then go into research of application, you would see some things don't work, and that may be devastating because you work and work and work and something is not working, but then still you get to the point when it starts working. So it's all about, is that what you want to do? You will not always be right. Somebody else may be right, you may be wrong, and it's everything is public, everything is discussed, everything is reviewed. Each and every piece of my work is reviewed in the smallest details. I personally love it because I'm in I'm in the center of the attention. I can get attention. I guess that's how teachers are. But that's my best piece of advice. If that is for you, then yes, go to and then yes, proceed. Curiosity, you must have curiosity. Unless you're curious and constantly curious about discovering more and you must be willing to learn, wanting to learn. I love to learn. I mean, anybody willing to teach me, I'll be listening and listening. If it's something worth learning, I absolutely love learning. That's part of another thing, that your education never ends. In my line of research and work, you never ever finish learning. You're constantly a student. For the rest of your life, you're constantly reading. Yes, I read better. Yes, I know how to get information, but I can go through 3 books, while freshman maybe needs a considerably smaller number of pages. But at the same time, unless you're willing to learn, don't go into this line of work. In this line of work, you must be willing and wanting and enjoying learning. To me, I could sleep in the library. Put me bed in the library, I'm moving in. I love libraries. I love books. I love to read. That's something I love to learn. Something new is really, it's challenging, but it's so wonderful to be challenged this way. I came to the US and I learned about American liberalism. I was so fascinated, but it was brain crashing activity after being raised in the Soviet Union. All of a sudden, my brain had to adjust to totally different ways of understanding. Oh my gosh, this is, but I was so happy. People discovered it. I can learn it. I can understand this. But not everybody may like to be challenged, and not everybody may be enjoying being a student, and that's fine too. There are many different ways to live life, and there are many different ways to build a career. If you don't like to be a student all the time, yeah, don't become a professor.
Thank you. Then I'm gonna have this is gonna be the last question. So let me pause 5 seconds and I'm gonna ask the final question. Okay, so thank you so much for speaking to us all today. My last question is, what's coming up for you in near future? What's your next big or small, whatever project you're working on?
Well, right now I turned my attention to building a community of scholars. I was elected as the chair of a committee, which is one of the major professional organizations in my field. It's a community of scholars in legislative studies, scholars and practitioners. And I need to kind of make this job my own, the chair of the committee. It's very new, I just being elected. And that the purpose will be to generate research, collaborative research. So I will be working on building more networks, engaging. I would like to engage more young scholars up and coming. The community is right now established by very well-known scholars from around the world. And I'm absolutely humbled that they chosen to elect me as the chair, but this is a leadership position. So I'll have to think not only my research, but how to move the field of comparative legislative studies altogether forward. And I would like to maintain the tradition that we had with this particular organization of networks of academics and practitioners, but we need to find new solutions. The world is so polarized. We see countries around the world struggling. We need to find solutions, and no one person can do that, which means we need to build partnerships. And I do believe I'm the right person for this particular job. So I actually can help and enable others to find the answers in this absolutely turbulent world at the moment, but we can make it all better together. We just need to work on that. And that means this particular organization has always been, it's part of the International Political Science Association. It's a recognized leader, but we need to find new solutions. And for that, we need new ideas, which means a lot of work. For me, this will be building research collaborations. That's my next step. And of course, I don't know if I said that, but I work on my book, on my third book. So that's my personal project, my personal research project. I would like to get this book out. And but even larger than me, it's larger than me. It's building partnership is larger than me. And that will take the organizational resources. And that's where I'm right now. I'm working on this big project on moving the community of scholars and practitioners to find solutions, and how legislatures, parliaments, congresses can make a difference. How do we build a society where everybody can be fulfilled and be the best version of himself or herself?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your attention. I really appreciate that you guys took the talk. It's really wonderful to have this reflection on my work. Thank you.
Thank you. Any last comment, Dr. Mani?
I have learned a lot today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's so
very good. So thank you so much, Dr. Khmelko. We wish you the best of luck to make this world a better place. You may need to work harder than ever before, but from what I can see, what's happening around the world, but I definitely, that you convinced me that the work you're putting together will make some changes in near future and for the future. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.